Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined here today with an awesome guest. I'm here with Pejman Ghadimi. Welcome, brother. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
I appreciate you having me on.
Dude, so I figured I'd give people a little bit of a background. So I actually knew about this good sir here from a while back, dude. I remember seeing your offers about exotic car hacking. And
Mhm.
then randomly one day on Twitter, I think I saw you quote tweet someone who I think it was a beginner freelancer that was reaching out to you or something like that. And you were just shitting on these guys that were doing cold outreach to you and just saying, this is so stupid. And then I just hit you up with like the exact same message the guy sent you, but like I made it even more stupid. And then we just started going back and forth. And the more I started to look at your Twitter and read about it, I was like, man, I think this guy actually has a very interesting view of the world in general. And that's why I reached out and wanted to hop on a call with you just to like jam a bit and see how you think. Cause I know that you're talking a lot about business. You talk a lot about cars, a lot about cars. You're definitely a huge car guy. And I was like, I don't know anything about the way you view the world. And
Mhm.
so I figured there'd be a really interesting conversation that Timeline would like to, check out. And as well, I'm very interested in hearing about
Mhm.
myself. So dude, thank you for joining me.
No, I really appreciate you having me. And I talk about cars just so we understand. I'm actually not that big of a gearhead, or I'm not a big car guy.
Yeah.
I like cars first. They're incredible things to as a store of wealth, like wealth preservation. That's a whole different topic. But outside of that, you talk about worldview. It's an opportunity at the experience of the highest level of aspiration for something that we do so much of, which is driving. Like,
Yeah.
think about the simplest thing is like if you're a human and you drive from point A to point B in a Honda. Well, that car was built by a robot to basically only care about your safety and efficiency in getting you from point A to point B. But
Yeah.
when you go from that same point A to point B, and every poor person will say this, well, the same car can get you to the same place. The same
Yeah.
watch will do the same thing as an Apple Watch. Why?
Yeah.
Why do you need a $80,000 Rolex or $500,000 Patek? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's a game of aspiration. Life is a game of evolution. Life is about getting to the next level on a continuous basis as a human. And so to experience life from the lens and experience of others who are the best at what they do is an experience reserved for the select few. That's why a Ferrari costs $500,000 and a Honda costs 20, 30 grand. So
Yeah.
so the guy who invented or designed the Ferrari, the interior designer that put the Alcantara inside, and then the engineer that made sure it can go 200 miles an hour, they are 5 to 10 generations deep into this game, and they
Wow.
have perfected their craft, right? And it doesn't matter if it's a Ferrari, Aston Martin, or whatever. It's a perfected craft for the experience of the select few, and touching it and going from point A to point B in that experience is going to elevate you as a human just as much as eating a $500 Wagyu steak versus eating it Outback. It creates a different experience.
It's very true, bro. Outback is awful. It's not good at all.
It's diarrhea food, right? It's
Yeah.
diarrhea food. It's comfort food for the poor. That's what I call it. Basically, it makes you
Mm.
feel like you're part of something that you don't need to be part of. Like, it's like, why should you have steak that'll give you cancer? Well, you shouldn't. The argument is because you want a reach into something that you haven't qualified for. That's why I'm such a dick to people who don't want to earn their place in society and who choose to constantly try to justify their poverty by saying that their Kia has a race model that goes just as fast, or their Mustang goes as fast as a Ferrari. No Ferrari owner gives a shit about any Mustang owner.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, deep inside, every Mustang owner wants to be a Ferrari owner at some point.
Dude, so it's interesting. I did an interview with Russ Ruffino the other week, and the first question I opened up with was, what do you believe? And it seems like you kind of did that right away. You jumped into it, and I love that. Yours was that you believe that you have to earn your spot in society, and you have to earn a higher spot. Am I right there, or do you want to add more
No,
to that?
no. Society is a structural confound
Okay.
created to allow us to create structure so we can master it and pass it. People get stuck in it because they don't learn to master it. So basically, it's like even religion is the same thing. It's a construct of living. It's basically saying, like, here are rules so we don't kill ourselves and destroy ourselves and have somewhat of a path. The point is, in the old ancient days, these things were necessary to prevent chaos, right? Before governments existed, before these things were around, we needed a form of control, because what prevented me from trying to rape your wife and say that's my family. Well, I had to have some kind of construct so that life wasn't just
Yeah.
about war, and there was an opportunity for societal evolution that enabled the human to evolve and not be slave or slave owner.
Yeah.
So this idea of religion came about structurally. It was then divided territorially. Like if you're in this territory, you believe in this religion. If you're in that territory, you believe in this, whatever. But the evolution of that was government, which was this is forced religion. Basically, you don't have a choice to pay your taxes. And a police force is basically the same. Like it's just forces, it gives you safety and construct in exchange for basically a tax, a donation, whatever you want to call it. The argument is these structural elements have always been created to give structure so people evolve. Unfortunately, over the past hundreds of years, people have gotten comfortable living in them and have been
Mm.
more keen to safety than living dangerously to evolve past it, to risk it, to grow. And so as a result, we have a whole bunch of prisoners who don't understand that society is the minimum expectation of mastery. So you can
Mm.
have a voice in the world. It's like, hey, did you master this basic game? Yes. Okay. You're allowed to speak. What do you want to say? Oh, this is what I'd like the world to look like. Okay. Well, there you go. We'll follow that lead. You've mastered it. Right. But people don't want that. They want their voices to be heard. They want to matter while they haven't earned their spot. And so my argument has always been that society, like I talk about this in my book, Third Circle Theory, it's like every human is basically evolved into three core fundamental pieces like awareness, self-awareness, and consciousness. And society, which is part of the second circle, is the construct, right, of identity. Societal identity is half of that circle. Cosmic identity and the birth of consciousness is the second half of it.
Yeah.
So the argument is that in the second circle, which is the one you pass, not you stay stuck in, to get to a conscious level, you have to be able to master the construct, like the matrix, whatever you want to call it. The basics are there to help you, but people look at it as a problem. No different than a startup job. You go work at McDonald's for 12 bucks an hour. People are like, that's a terrible job. It's not a job. It's an entry into the workforce because you have no skills. If you weren't an idiot, you wouldn't have that job. You would have a much deeper job. If you had a skill, well, if you were a technician, you wouldn't be working as a cashier if someone valued that skill. So
Mm.
the argument is you have no skill. There are workforce jobs to enable you to earn a wage and participate. But people in that participation trophy mindset go, well, I got my trophy. I have a job. Well, that's not. The point of that job was for you to stay in it 6 months, earn a skill, evolve to a cook, evolve to a manager, evolve to an assistant manager, evolve to a regional manager, evolve to a franchisee owner. The whole idea is set up for you. But because you come into that job and you go, I don't get paid enough, I don't get enough vacations, I'm seeking more comfort now that I have the job. 12 years later, you're complaining about the minimum wage. So you're not complaining about like the fact that you've had 900 opportunities to earn a skill, earn more skills, learn other jobs while there, and then grow
Yeah.
and talk to management and get there. You're complaining that because you were stagnant, someone is not recognizing stupidity and paying you more money to survive at a stupid job you should have left 12 years ago. So,
Mm.
so this mentality is what prevents individuals from finding any level of success in life because they basically put themselves in a prison, and that prison is called comfort and safety.
So have you found it in your own life that, I mean, obviously you're a successful dude, you're doing well for yourself. Do you have to break yourself out of comfort and safety in your own right with your own, your
100%
own
all the
finances?
time.
How do
As
you
soon
go
as
about
I'm
doing it?
as soon as I'm afraid of something, I do it without thinking about it.
What would be some examples of that have applied
So
in your
let's say financially, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I've made some incredibly good deals in real estate, right? Like incredibly good deals in my personal life, not as a real estate investor. I'm saying like personally bought and sold some of my personal properties and done very well. Here's my argument. I live with zero debt, meaning like I owe nothing. My house is beautiful and I owe nothing. But I want a nicer house. And when I say nicer, for me to go nicer, I go from having zero debt to having $20 million in debt. So I'm saying really nice.
Yeah.
That debt roughly costs 300,000 a month. Think about that, right? Like going from no debt to 300,000 a month for a house. Like just that's
Yeah.
not even your landscaping. It's like just for a month. I'm not talking
Doesn't
about
even include the HOA or anything. Like
exactly
it's just the
$4
mortgage
million
itself.
a year just to live somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I find that like, okay, so that construct is very far, right? Like from zero to that, like this big gap.
Yeah.
And so instead of thinking about it and saying, how do I make the mental gap? I just immediately go see homes and immediately pull the trigger on the first one I like, so that I'm forced to figure out a way to make that my reality now. Now it's not my reality. It's no longer me trying to get comfortable with the reality. So you shatter reality by jumping first and figuring it out, because once you're in the path, you're forced to figure it out. You almost have to be naive in a way, like kind of instead of afraid, naive, because you'll have to figure it out, right? You trust on yourself to figure it out. Now, you can do the same with businesses. Like this is the same, not even money. I'm saying you build X type of businesses. You undertake a brand new type of business that's very scary and new because you know nothing about it. I might be
Mm.
maybe in the educational business and suddenly I see an opportunity in oil and gas and I decide to completely go merge myself in a new industry to learn something new. So you don't stay complacent saying, I am capped at my capacity.
Mm.
I am now capped at the fact that I've learned new capacity and new skills. It's the same game, no matter that you're playing at the cashier level at $12 an hour or that you're playing at $12 million a day, a week, a month. Doesn't make a difference. The
Yeah.
difference is the zeros are the same, right? Like there's just more zeros coming. It's like just the same game, more zeros. But the mindset is exactly the same, right? Because like breaking yourself out of a $12 job for a $500 an hour job is the same mentality as breaking yourself from a $12 million, income to a $100 million income. Get it? Like you have to learn new skills and you have to push into barriers of things you don't know and understand. The part that's harder the richer you get is that you have more on the line, right? Like there's more to lose. Like when you have nothing, you're naive, so you can afford to lose everything.
Yeah.
You don't have shit to lose, right? You're like, yeah, I'll lose my
Yeah.
job. I'll find another $12 an hour job.
Who cares? Oh, I lost my car. Okay, well,
Yeah,
the car was
it's like, it
$1,000.
was
It's
a shitty
fine.
car. I'll buy
Yeah.
another one. Like doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But
Yeah.
the bigger and the higher you get, the more you have to get yourself used to that. Because if you don't, it's very easy to get complacent. I mean, we see this in incredibly wealthy people who are one trick ponies. They literally had a lot of success in one field, like maybe they had a big business they sold. They made like 50 million, 100 million, and then they have such a hard time reinventing themselves. They basically like don't know what to do and they get bored out of their mind for years and lose their purpose because they're not reinventing themselves across the way. They've just had that
Mm.
one hit and they basically jumped, like I said, these three circles. They jumped from the beginning of the first circle to the end of the second, but they never did the work in between.
Mm.
Get it? So
Okay.
they got lucky. Like an athlete does the same. Like, here's a $300 million contract. Oh my God. Yeah, I was in the hood and I got $300 million. Like, what the fuck? Like, this gap is like huge.
Yeah.
Like, did
Yeah.
they learn to be the man that earns $300 million? Probably not. So if they're smart, like the Shaq O'Neals and the bigger, more well versed Jay Z's of the world, well, they reverse engineer stuff. They go, I got all this money. I'm not rich. I have an opportunity to now become a $300 million man and learn what is it like to own a $300 million empire. What businesses? What investments? Where do I need to go? What do I need to learn? The losers are the ones that go, who has a good advisor on what to do? Like, who can tell me who's the best guy to buy me cars? Who's the best guy to advise me on how to invest my money? Those are the losers. They go, I want to buy the knowledge. I don't want to learn the knowledge. And by buying the knowledge, they're paying a fee for that knowledge, right? The wealth advisor goes, I'll take 5%. The car guy goes, I'll take 10%. The watch guy goes, I'll do your ice stuff for 20K a month. So, like, all these things. And then they look 5 years later and they go, how do we go from 300 million to 20 million? Well, you just didn't pay attention because you didn't understand what it was like to be a $300 million owner. Like there's a point where it costs you money to leave money in a bank. People don't understand that. They think like a guy that's got 10 grand in the bank, they go, what kind of interest rate can the bank pay me? Well, at 300 million, like you can't just leave money in the bank. Like you're losing money every day. So this mentality shift doesn't occur for those people. And that's why they lose in the long term.
Dude, I'm like, I want to ask you questions almost specific to my situation because I'm like so curious to hear how you would think about this. Like,
I'm happy to.
dude, so I've been in direct response and copywriting for probably about 5 years now at this point. And I started out zero skills, no handouts. Like dude, I found cold emails that I sent you back in the day where I was just emailing everyone like offer, 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 offer. And I worked myself up. I got to the point where I went from just doing like emails to eventually doing like VSLs, sales letters, then eventually full campaign builds, everything like that. And I'm at a point now where I have a services portion of my business and a training portion of my business. And I find myself at like the the point where I'm hitting the ceiling is 50K a month. I keep hitting 50K a month. And then it's like, I want to crack past that. And then it goes down a bit. And then I
Mhm,
go back up and it's 50K a month. And it's cyclical and I can see it. And
mhm.
I've been asking myself, well, what's the thing that I need to do to break past that point? And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that because I'm sure other people watching this, they have their ceiling,
So
whatever it is.
you have to ask the questions around the profession.
Yeah.
Is the scale in the unit of clients you can't reach? Like meaning like if you had three of you, could you reach three times the client? Are there enough clients to reach if you had three of you?
There's a lot of people. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I think that
So
there's a lot. Yeah.
okay, so what prevents you from hiring two people and building them up to basically work a sales team and then also build on the other side a tech team to to fulfill that work, or at least so you can move yourself to a higher position within your own company where you look back and say, "Hey, I'm reviewing the copyrights like instead of actually doing them myself, like from scratch, and I'm
Yeah.
also training other people to do that." What prevents you from doing that?
Yeah, I mean, just what I've seen in the past, what will happen is that I have a guy, I start training him, and then I'm bringing him underneath my wing, and then he always wants to go do his own thing.
That's
And it
always
always,
always the case. Every
yeah,
business. You're not so
yeah,
that you see that's not a what will happen to you. That's what happens to everyone.
yeah,
So the argument is, how is everyone else doing it? Is everyone getting cheated on by their guys all the time, every
no,
time? No.
no,
You're hitting what I call the barrier of resistance in business, which
yeah,
means you're generalizing this one effect that has occurred to you, or like one or two times,
yeah,
as something you haven't been able to overcome, and an invisible obstacle that's not actually real. Like meaning the way we break resistance is we keep pushing that rubber until it eventually shatters, right? And these guys have been the pullback. Like, hey, I interviewed guy one, I trained him for 6 months. He ran away with some of my clients. Okay. I got guy two a year later, and then that didn't work out. And then I gave up. I
yeah,
decided I'm going to do this myself. Okay. Well, what about guy three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10? What did you change about your own hiring structure? What kind of new legal paperwork did you create when hiring people to know their intentions right away? Did you pay 10K for a lawyer to write you a very strong NDA non compete when people start? Did you come up with a structure where they could maybe become partners instead of running away? Did you come up with a comp structure that was appealing enough for them to stay even though they're getting better at what they do? Like all of these things are basically your mistakes, not theirs. You can't control what other people do, but you can learn from these mistakes and say, this occurred. My goal still hasn't changed. My goal is still to scale my business, right? You still
yeah,
want 100K a month. You don't want 50K a month. So
yeah,
the argument is not, should you break that 50K barrier? The argument is, how do you break that 50K barrier while overcoming this obstacle, which clearly has become an obstacle for you, right?
yeah.
Like that is in your head today more than anything else.
Part of me, what I think about and what I've come to is that it may, the conclusion I came to is I feel like the model inherently restricts that, and that you have to go hire other people because services in general, they're not as like scalable. If I take on 100 clients tomorrow, it's a lot of work versus like info, for instance. When you have info, I could sell 100 courses tomorrow, and it's like it didn't make any difference than if I sold
Right.
one course a day. So I
But
went
you would
towards
still
I
have
want
to
to change the model.
scale, but you would have to scale both.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
one of the things that becomes clear though, just so you understand, one will lead to more sales of the other. So either ways, my argument is you can't avoid what you're trying to avoid. I'm not
Yeah.
arguing that there isn't more money in courses in digital space. That's fine. Like there's money. If you have a quality course, like, it's going to make money. Like we've done very well. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been
Yeah.
selling on the internet for a long time, and
Yeah.
our course is quality. We build communities. And each year I make way more money than people even imagine they could make in courses. And I do
Yeah.
it quietly. I don't say anything, but again, quality courses will lead to quality dollars. The argument here is that it still doesn't change the fact that even to scale a course model, you can't do it by yourself. And this
Yeah.
is the other argument. You still need a sales team. You still have higher offers that are more expensive. You
Yeah.
still have to expose your inner working, your funnels to people. So the behavior you need to overcome, regardless that you sell consulting, copywriting, or courses, is still the same behavior you need to overcome, which is hiring people, which is a
Yeah.
struggle. And the victory for you is behind that plateau. Get it? The
Mhm.
victory for you is behind that piece. And the more you ignore that piece and the more you try to justify why a different direction will not like help, then here's what you'll do. Business one, like service one, 30,000 a year. Service two, 20,000 a year. Aha, I can make service two go 50,000 a year. And that I don't need people for. Okay, that goes up. Service one comes down. Then you're like, why am I still making only 50 grand? I don't understand. Well, because your time went over there instead of hiring people. So instead of substituting revenue, you need to scale revenue. And that comes from your capacity to scale what you lack, which is your ability to hire people.
Damn.
That you like it or not, you're still going to
Yeah.
have to face that. That's the argument. Like the universe has given you a challenge you have to overcome. And the longer you sway away from it, the more it's going to show you that everything you want is behind that overcoming.
I want to talk a little bit about with third circle theory and overall your mindset. Like right now, everything that you're sharing with me about these barriers and everything. Obviously, you learned this through experience. But I'm curious, dude, like, did you have mentors? And if so, like, how'd you go about figuring this stuff out? Because it's an interesting perspective that I'm really interested about.
Nothing. Zero mentors.
Okay.
I believe mentorship is here, and here. Your capacity to pay attention. Awareness is mentorship.
Yeah.
My thing was when I was much younger, I was in banking and I had gotten a job that was out of this world I shouldn't have gotten, but I persuaded someone who's really good in sales, they gave me this job. Everybody would go to people and be like, well, you're the best, this other guy's the best manager, you should ask him to mentor you. And I would say, no, let me go work where they work so I can watch them work. Let me pay attention to how to speak to clients. Let me sit in on an interaction they have with an employee. I was never like, dude, can you mentor me? Can you meet with me weekly and let me know what I'm doing wrong? I'd like your guidance. And no. We have more access to information today than I ever had in my life growing up.
Yeah.
Yet there's still kids that are like, how should I make money today? I'm like, motherfucker, have you used Google? Like what country or what
Yeah.
do you live in fucking India? I was like, they even have Google there. Like, why the fuck can't you use Google and
Yeah.
figure out? Well, I looked on Google and the first pages were all ads, and then I went in this funnels. Okay, did you check page 2, page 3, page 4, page 50? How determined are you to get the information you seek? Versus how determined are you to be lazy and wait for someone else to hand you that? So for me growing up, my mentors were the incredible individuals that I had the opportunity to meet in each category of what they were. And then I basically watched them. Like the thing was, I didn't go outside of my job to seek a mentor in the real world when I had great mentors who were good at their job, which was the same job I had. Relevancy of mentorship matters a lot. People come to me and they go, hey, how would you scale a business in healthcare? I'm like, why the fuck would you ask me this? Do I own a business in healthcare? They're
Yeah.
like, oh, I thought you were a business guy. I'm like, of course I can figure it out, but I haven't done it. So does that mean that you want my advice? Well, no,
Yeah.
I want more basic advice. Okay, then use Google. You don't need my advice. Like if you want basic feel good like advice, use Instagram, use Google. You'll get generic shit in 30 seconds or less. It should give you a hard on, and then you can go try to make money. Like, that's how people think, right? But
Yeah.
for me, it's more about like, hey, I want to be a great bank manager. Okay, how am I paying attention to the best bank manager in the company? Like, that's what I want to pay attention to, right? Hey, I want to be in the business of selling courses. Okay, great. Who am I paying attention to that's really doing well in the course space? Not pretending to do well, but like, who am I having a chance to just watch? How do they do their funnels? Why do they have this little library here instead of this bigger store here? Why did they speak this way? Why is their marketing that way? These questions force me to go find the answers, not by asking them, but by continuously watching them. And that is something people don't do. It gives a reference point of continuity. So you can't be lied to, basically. If you understand the story from the first day to now, it's much easier to have context. I once had lunch with a guy who was selling courses. I was at a point 4 years in, I had created all this content, like thousands of blog posts, all this shit, and I was making zero money. It was my first company called Secret Entourage. A lot of people don't know it. We literally invented the podcast before none of you guys existed. This was like 2008, 2007, 2008. We were doing podcasting,
Yeah.
now Spotify didn't even have a fucking podcast section.
Yeah.
So back then we are doing interviews, with people and everything else. And the one thing that happened is 4 years in, I'm making zero money, right? And I stopped literally building my company that was doing 400 million in revenue and was netting me $3.5 million in my pocket to come do this shit online. And like everyone's telling me I'm an idiot, I'm wrong. Like, why the fuck did I do this? Like, this is stupid. Dude, go back to your shit. You're good in cars. You're good with all this shit. Go back to what you're doing with luxury lifestyle. You do better there. And I'm like, you know what? I just believe in the scale of this. Like, I think there's value here. I think we're too early, but I was like, I think it's good. So I'll keep doing it. So I keep doing this shit, and I'm almost running out of money doing it all this year, and I'm making nothing. Well, I go to lunch with one of my car clients who happened to be one of the best guys that was selling courses like crazy. Like, he was selling fucking courses like nuts. And I see all these other guys like Pat Flynn and all that shit on the internet pretending they're making fucking 200 grand a month, blogging. So I'm like, this guy's making 200 grand a fucking month back then blogging. And I'm sitting here not able to make 200 grand in a year, like I'm not even making 30 grand a year. So how defeated do you think I feel? Right. I'm like, I'm richer than this guy, but yet in this industry, he's kicking my ass. So I go to lunch with this other guy who tells me all these guys are full of shit. He's like, they're all lying. It's part of their marketing structure. They pretend they're making all this money online, so that way other people follow them and they want to learn from them. I'm like, well, that would make sense. But then I go, wait a minute. How do I know you're not lying? Right? Like, you're here telling me you're making all this money. He's like, yeah, they're all broke. I know them all personally. And I go, okay, well, then you prove it. Fuck it. I'm sitting here having a conversation. He pulls out his phone. He's like, during this lunch, I made 40 G's on my phone. And he shows me all his PayPal receipts and everything that came in from people buying his fucking courses for 5 grand, 2 grand, 5 grand. And he's like, you see, it's just constant. Every hour I'm making 30, 40 grand. And I'm like, this is fantastic. So the first thing that comes to mind is, what a loser am I for still not figuring this shit out, right?
Yeah.
And this guy's sitting here. I'm like, wow, well, someone just put me in my spot. But it did 2 things for me. The first one is it proved to me that I was in the right industry. Because if this guy could do it, then why the fuck couldn't I do it? So I had to figure out a way, right? If you're doing it, why can't I do it? That's the first argument. Maybe, hey, you need $30 million to start. Well, I didn't have that, so what should I do? Okay, well, but that wasn't the case. He was like, I also started from zero. So I'm like, well, if you did it, so can I. So I need to stay the course. That was one. But the most important question I asked that gentleman was the question people never ask me. I didn't ask him, well, how much money are you making now? I'm excited. What should I do? How should I change my business? What am I doing wrong? I said, how long have you been doing this? He said 12 years and then 8 more years from the act itself. So 20 years total. I said, you've been doing this shit for 20 years. He goes, yeah. And I'm like, I'm on year 4, right? I'm like going year 3 to year 4, making 0. Yeah. So the first thing, the best question I ever asked anybody in my life was, how much money were you making on year 4? He said, I didn't make any money till year 12. So the first most important thing that I asked was really, let me not compare myself to you today as an expert in your field. Let me compare myself to where you were when you started. And I was like, at least we had 35 grand in revenue on year 4, and this guy had 0.
Yeah.
So I said, well, imagine the scale of that then. If I can keep going by year 10, I should be way ahead of this guy by year 20.
Yeah.
So that gave me context. And it was reality. It's guys in my field. He's great at it. He starts with the same leverage. I'm doing the same thing. He also didn't know what he was doing when he started. And instead of asking him, how much money do you have today and how can I be cool like you? I asked, how much money did you make back when you were me, basically, in this field?
Yeah.
And that answer was the most important, that reminded me that I should basically keep going. And now, once that belief set in after that, that I was in the right place and I stopped questioning if I should keep going or not.
Yeah.
The year after, we made 500 grand. The year after, we made $1 million. Now, the year after, we made $3 million. And here's the best part. Now, every time we launch something new, we make $1 million a week. So what I'm saying is, the argument is that something that occurs is I was right at that tip, of that open the door kind of thing. And I was about to give up because I had the wrong perspective on what it takes to win in an industry. And I was much younger, but the one thing I've learned is that it takes 5 years not to get good at a business. It takes 5 years to go from I'm an idiot to I know what I'm doing. It takes an extra 5 years. It takes an extra 5 year to go from I know what I'm doing to I'm good at what I do. And then it takes the next 10 years to master what I do. And then by the end of the 20th year doing it, I guarantee you, no one can touch you if you committed to a skill for 20 years and improving every day. I guarantee you nobody can touch your money in that space, right? Now, the other argument is the space you're in really profitable or not? Some people don't like, they think the space they're in is profitable. They're like, oh, I think playing music is very profitable, but the argument would show otherwise, like that very few people make it. So if that is real and the environment allows for the scale, and you are saying that you're capped at this, but the top copywriters are making millions a month, and you're capped at 50K, then the
Yeah.
argument is the skill is there, it's just not there for you.
Yeah.
And when you are where you are in the context of the years, you can start to adapt and understand where you should be in the context of the money.
That's amazing. Dude, I want to pivot a bit because I love this conversation, but I have so many different questions I want to ask you. And dude, one of the main things that popped up for me through all of this, you have such an amazing philosophy on business, the way you view it, and just hearing it, I'm like, again, I could talk about this for an hour, but I kind of want to go elsewhere. You have this philosophy on business, you have this philosophy on life. What's your philosophy on God? What do you think about with connection to source, connection to spirit? Are you spiritual? Follow a specific religion? This is
So,
what was the biggest thing that was brewing in my mind while I was listening to you.
so to me, religious is a bullshit structure. Religion is a bullshit structure. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what background it is, what belief it has, or whatever. If you study the source of religion as a core, the reason I can't take it seriously is really simple. Most people study their religion and religions of interest. Most people don't study the history of religion because we are
Yes.
given a confounding structure from our parents, grandparents, mentors, etc. So let's talk about value systems, and I'll tie it back into spirituality and religion in
Totally.
a second.
Sounds good.
In the third circle theory, the first circle is a circle of awareness, the second self-awareness, the third consciousness. The thing that changes in these three circles as a man evolves is his perception and understanding of time and value systems. First circle value systems we're all born in. We're taught good and bad, right? You're taught from your parents, don't touch this, this is good. Don't talk back to the police, this is bad, etc.
Yeah.
As we grow older, we change our understanding of where we receive information from. Our mentor circle grows from parents to teachers to government to like government people like police
Yeah.
officers.
Yeah.
It even evolves to like friends, their friends' parents, right, etc. And our value system evolves from good and bad to right and wrong, following structural law. So in the second circle, the circle of societal identity, we follow a value system of right and wrong, which we're told there's consequence now to the good and bad. And it is one that is not just impacting yourself, it is impacting others. That's where we start to learn identity and becoming self aware. And then where that changes as you evolve towards a conscious level is that choice of good and bad, right and wrong, no longer plays a game in consciousness. Instead, because those are secondary to the one thing that consciousness is a mastery of time. And when you're a master of time, you're in charge because you control your intent of
Mhm.
wisdom or deceit. You do not control the outcome of that intent. You experience whatever comes with it.
Okay.
So when you are in that state, life changes entirely. You're in flow, or so I call it, without resistance anymore, because you set the intent. You welcome any experience that you deemed to be good or bad previously as experience, and use that to continue to enjoy and value the time you have to experience it to begin with. So that change in consciousness also changes your constructs of control, as they happen. So when we look at religion, we look at this construct of how to behave. And if we look at the reason I can't take religion specifically seriously is because if we look at the history of religion and into the first religion ever recorded, do you know what that was?
It's probably going to be something Eastern, I'm guessing.
Somewhat, yes.
I would say it's either going to be Hinduism or something.
Nope, way
Probably,
older.
probably China. Something in
Nope,
like no, no
way older.
Confucianism. Way over. All
Oh,
right, we're at.
you can Google it. It's called Zarathustraism.
Okay.
So a lot of philosophers talk about Zarathustraism because he became very popular during an era where Nietzsche, I don't know if you know who Nietzsche is, Nietzsche
Yeah.
and Carl Jung were two big philosophers, Eastern and Western philosophers. They a book Nietzsche wrote became very world famous called Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which was the first prophet that basically ever showed himself. This was way before the existence of a Jesus or anything else. So the idea of let's not even go into, oh, we want to believe that prophet and not whatever bullshit is out there. The argument though that's important about what was the difference between Zarathustraism and every other confining religion after that, it was that it had no governing body. It had no church. It had no congregation. It had no voice other than the voice of one person who spoke for yet another God. No different than the structure we've been taught about Jesus and him not being God and so on and so forth, right? But or like in the Muslim religion, we can in Islam we can talk about Muhammad. In every single thing there's a disciple and then there's the God, right? So the stories are the same shit. It's over and over. It's the same thing, no matter how you look at it.
I mean, there's
So
religions literally like Hermeticism, which has Hermes Trismegistus, and
yeah,
Hermes is
yeah,
literally,
exactly. Yeah, alchemy. So alchemy
yeah,
plays a role in religion too. That's a whole different topic. But
yeah.
alchemy is I'll tell you something that'll probably be interesting. I talk about this in my Creator Choice book. Alchemy is what we call entrepreneurship today.
Hmm.
We evolved entrepreneurship into a societal realm, so we call it entrepreneurship. But alchemy was the art of turning lead into gold, turning nothing into something of value.
Yeah.
And so the idea is the same. And what entrepreneurship stands for, which has lost its meaning over the years, people think it's self-employment, bullshit, or making money. Entrepreneurship is about unity around creation. The more you unite people around your creation, the more that creation spreads, the more your legacy separates from the human itself, and the more that legacy becomes worth billions. And it changes. The more people you impact, the more money you make, right? Simple.
Yeah.
People complicate this very much. But let's go back for a second to this concept of Zarathustraism. The one thing that was different about that religion than every other one is that Zarathustraism focus was never about the worship of God. From a very young and early stage, that religion was about one key thing. Man was always meant to become God, to serve by his side, to protect the kingdom. So it wasn't about, hey, you there, worship God, listen to what he says, and you'll go to heaven. The difference was it was about, hey, you become God because time's running out and God's getting weak. We need help. So here is the argument. Every religion past that had a governing body, and it was too dangerous, way too dangerous, to have a governing body threatened by men who believed he could become God. Because then all men were really created with the equal sense of becoming gods. So that is a threat to a king, that is a threat to a church. And so this whole
Wow.
argument has been changed to God is meant to be worshipped in every religion. So you will never become greater than God. God is the greater body in the world, blah, 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 bullshit. And everything under that is that. So here's where I pose this argument about uh, theological evolution versus this understanding that there's one source and we are that important to be the next designation of that source. Science has proved there are multiple dimensions, as many as 13, right here on Earth, taking place at the very same time. We as human beings understand four of them. We're prisoners of the fourth, which is time. We confine ourselves in the third, which is space. We are the only species that physically lives on Earth that confines in space and time at the same time. So we have an experience here in the body and have an experience elsewhere in the spirit at the same exact time. The most important and larger concept of the God structure in humanity is really simple. What makes you a God to an ant? I ask. Very simply, you are faster, so much faster, 800 times faster as a matter of time. So you can technically control the entire experience of an ant. There is nothing an ant can do to alter your experience. There is nothing it can do to prevent you from altering its. So think about it. You can take an ant, move it kingdoms. You can take it somewhere else and drop it off in different forests, just across the street. It wouldn't know where it is. You could take, for example, an ant and kill it. You could spill water on it and it would have no understanding. And the ant has no idea who you are to it. It has no understanding that you're a human or not, or what you signify in its pace. It doesn't even know what your foot is when you land next to it. It doesn't know that a human's foot is there. It just knows that there's this giant thing that is about to thump half of its friends to shit. And then there's water that leaks and it's basically fucking dead. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
What prevents us from having a similar experience to a species that lives in the fifth, sixth, seventh dimension right here on Earth that we do not see or perceive or understand? Nothing. My argument is that humanity is a test, nothing different than evolving through the stages, the same way we've created hierarchies in our own society. Society, the second circle, is an image of structure for everything that happens in the game of life. Look at cars. What are they? They are four limbs, right? Four wheels.
Yep.
Okay, a heart, an ECU, a nervous system. Like,
Yep.
why do we think that creating cars should work this way? Why do we even put an engine in a car? Because all we did, we looked at our own bodies as a method of transportation for our soul and said, how do we mechanically create this? Because at the time we didn't have the biological tools to do that. So we created a car. And what does every invention in the world do that has been accepted by humanity? It saves time because we're prisoners of time. So if you actually look up every invention that has ever stuck to mankind, the only reason those inventions have stuck around is because they do something or allow you to do something faster than you could without it. A vacuum cleaner helps you clean the floor faster. A car gets you there faster. A plane gets you there faster. There is no invention that had ever stuck on Earth as a core mass adopted invention that wasn't a question of saving time. So for every inventor out there, if you're ever fucking sitting there like, I'm going to create the next Post-it, start thinking bigger and start thinking about how do I save more time in something that someone didn't save time on. But the main argument here that I'm trying to make is that if our role is to evolve into the next dimension, basically, we are fourth dimensional prisoners. How do we become fifth dimensional prisoners and fourth dimensional existing beings? Then here's the question I pose. Isn't God any single entity that has control over our dimension? So just like we have control over the dimension of an ant who's a one-dimensional insect, yet lives in a three-dimensional space with us, wouldn't any single human be a god to an ant? Therefore, wouldn't every single being that lives in the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh be an actual like god to a human? Perceived or not. So my argument is to think that a single source, a single God, is in control and view of every human existence across every galaxy in the universe. Even the billions of galaxies we have no idea about, all the life in the universe that we'll never even see or touch while we're alive or talking here in this lifetime. The argument becomes, why are we so arrogant to think that the ultimate, that what lies between the source and us is just one layer?
It's not.
Right. So,
It's a
so think
lot.
about what
Yeah.
was Jesus, what was Muhammad, what was
These
Buddha.
are the man gods. These were the
Yes.
guys who are
Well, no, no,
traditionally
no,
said.
no. They're important. No, they're not. Look at what was the one skill they all had? They all knew time. They all knew what would happen to them. They all knew exactly who would betray them, how they would be betrayed, what would occur to Earth, what would occur to the environment. Why did they know this? Because they were individuals who basically were fourth dimensional beings who had view and capacity of time. And so all they were is they were individuals that were greater than us who did not fear their mortal life because they understood it had no correlation to anything and instead had a view of what would occur in the world. That is the key to understanding that we are here not to sit around and think that we're going to heaven to rest or to have comfortable, amazing sex with virgins or whatever the fuck we want to do. We are here because we have an experience here. We have an opportunity here to master what it's like to become who we are meant to become, to take our place in the next dimension and continue to grow. Now, I don't believe we can do this in one lifetime. I believe that's why we have 48 karmic powers, because we have 48 masteries we need to take to grow to the next level. Now, could take us 100 lifetimes to do it, could take us 30, 20, whatever. Doesn't make a difference. The argument is until that mastery's occurred, we cannot take our place in the next cycle. And so my argument to sit here and believe that a single source is going to reward me to going to hell or heaven, and who is to judge what is right or wrong, or what
Mm.
is good and bad, structural things that have nothing to do with consciousness and intent. And yet, those men deciders, rulers of churches elected by other men, are now somehow the voices of a source greater than all things in the world. Like you understand how ridiculous this sounds
Dude,
on a conscious scale?
yeah, let me share this with you. So I've had like my fair share of a lot of religions, dude. I like studying religion. I like listening to people that talk about religion because I find it interesting.
Mhm.
I've been Orthodox Christian, I've been non-denominational Christian, I've been Buddhist, I've been Hindu, I've been, even Muslim at a certain point. People are shocked always that the white guy was
It is good.
Muslim.
It's good to
Yeah.
experience and understand, right? That's
Oh
something
yeah,
that your perspective.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there was this one story, I'll never forget this. I remember I'd like missed, it's when I was Muslim. I had missed like 3 prayers the day before. And so I just had a crazy busy day. And so I told myself, I'm going to wake up early tomorrow, go to the masjid in the morning and pray at the masjid at like really early morning. Like I think Fajr is like 5 a.m. there. And so I got there at 4:30 and I'm sitting down, or I'm doing my prayers up, down, up, down, up, down, right? And I think I had to do like 27 of them or something like that. And so I did 27 of them. And I did my prayer. And then everyone else came. And then we did the prayer together as a group and we left. And one of these older gentlemen pulled me to the side. He said, Nicholas, can I speak to you for a second? I'm thinking this guy's going to be like, yo, like, I got a girl, I got a daughter. She's ready for marriage. Like, I think you're the guy. You're getting here at 4:30 a.m. Like, my son doesn't even do that. Nope. This guy pulls me to the side and he goes, how many prayers did you do when you got here? And I said, because they'd walked in, and I was like, I 27, I think. And he was, or 17, whatever the fuck the number was. And he was like, you can't do that. And I said, why? And he said, Allah will not accept it, and pointed up. And I said, why? And he said, because it has to be in threes. And I remember walking to my, after that, just being like, okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Walking to my car, sitting in my car and thinking, and I'm imagining God as this entity just laughing his ass off at me right now. Like you literally get up at 4:30 a.m. and dedicate the first part of your day just to worshiping me. And
Mhm.
then because you didn't do it in threes, nah,
Right.
I'm not
Uh,
gonna take it.
no
Nah,
good,
it's
no
okay,
good. No,
take it.
this isn't acceptable. Go
Yeah.
back.
So I started to view this and I was looking at all of these different embodiments because I had studied, Hermeticism, I had studied Christianity and Christ and Muhammad. And, all these entities are fighting with each other and saying this is wrong and that's wrong and we're on top. And then this is when it clicked for me is like, it's man. And this is what the ineffable is. It's man trying to explain something that cannot be explained through man. And so what do? We immediately do what we have to do as humans is create our little camp and the us versus them. Our camp is better than their camp. Our camp has to have these rules if you want to be a part of this camp. And essentially all it was is man-made rules around it. And so I stopped asking myself, what the heck are the people saying? And instead I only studied the prophets. What did Jesus say? What did Muhammad say? What did Krishna say? Nothing else. I looked at everything else as useful commentary. I love reading from the Orthodox fathers. I love this stuff. It's interesting to me. But I stopped viewing it from that perspective and only viewed it from what did the prophets say. And that's kind of where I ended up now. At least that's where I'm at now.
Assuming you're getting the correct interpretation of that text in itself.
Of what they're saying, you can never know for certain. But I have to ask. That's
But
when it comes
that
down
is
to
that is the argument. You see these
yeah,
camps you talk about. The camps are nothing more than structural control.
yeah,
Now, there's also something to be said that's very important because I think there's a big misunderstanding around humanity around why religion is very important. It's not a bad thing. And I'm going to tell you why. Like, we look at society as a bad thing, just like I told you, a job is not a bad thing. A $12 an hour job is a great thing. It's an
yeah,
opportunity, right? Religion also is that because, in a way, you have to understand that the most commonly used and accepted religion, like if you have like Christian religion and you go, Christianity is a religion we should all follow, whatever it is that that cult or that group of people wants us to follow, there is an importance to that as well. Because remember, religion is a form of structure and control. It's structure to those who understand it, it's control to those that do not. Where the difference becomes very apparent is how we use it, right? And
yeah,
it's true that when we follow one common religion and common doctrine, we make common progress, Look at how the Western world has progressed to Christianity versus the Eastern world that has not, to true dictatorships and authoritarianism that forces a control mechanism rather than a structure. The difference between like a religion in the Middle East and a religion in the state of the United States, for example, is its structural versus control. Like you look in the Middle East, you get punished by police immediately, right, for breaking these laws, like which are religious laws. And,
Yeah.
and so therefore they beat you, they kill you, whatever, right? It's a form of control. But once we adopt a form of structure, like where we talk about, the structure of the United States, for example, where religion is structural, not imposed, then there is a very big difference about the progress as an economy you make. Because what is the evolution of religion in the United States that is mandatory? Capitalism. Money has become the god that becomes the equalizer in all things in the Western world, right? Like money is
Yeah.
basically the deciding factor.
Yeah.
Who has the most leverage? The richest people in the world. Who has the
Yeah.
most control? The richest people in the world. Who controls what religion people follow? The richest people in the world. It's always that, right? They win wars now with billionaire satellites. They don't win wars with their own, like defense systems. Like what I'm saying is, the point that I'm trying to make here is that structural religion can create a lot of advancement societal wise. And it's very important to also not look at it as the enemy or the negative context of, oh, all these people are brainwashed because they're going to church and singing Zimbabwe together, or this guy told you have to do 30 prayers, whatever, and that's bullshit, and
Yeah.
you got to do it this way. The
Yeah.
argument is that structure is necessary because
Yeah.
there is a reality that 95% of the world is not self-aware and is not conscious.
Yeah.
So when they are just aware, they need to be given structure, otherwise they will collapse. Like they
Absolutely.
are, and that is a necessity. So as much as I'm the type of person that'll tell you religion is a scam in every way possible, in the sense of like it isn't a necessity for your human evolution or human salvation, it is very much a necessity from a societal standpoint to structure for people in the first and second circle how to evolve as they're growing up into government. It is a preset state of kind of structure for people before they're old enough to abide by the law at 18. And it is
Yeah.
also a necessity in how, as a society, we move forward with a common understanding instead of killing each other, over like, this is how the world should be and not that, and this and that. And
Yeah.
so this is the war you're seeing also in the political space. There is a breed of people who understand that they're losing their grasp on this, and the melting pot is becoming dangerous because capitalism hasn't been accepted as the next religion, if that makes sense. So there is a very big kind of back and forth going on in the Western world, about adopting Christian values. Let's fight abortion laws. Let's do this. And
Absolutely.
try to bring that back. And on the other
Yeah.
side, there's the whole let's be free and allow everyone to be who they want. They want a vagina, they get them a vagina. Like
Yeah.
it's
Let
just,
them do whatever the hell they want.
yeah, but then there's this core of people which also hold a lot of weight and are saying the right thing, where they're saying, if you let them do this, how far will they take it? What's next, right? And how much do we lose that structure that allows somewhat of a decent human path forward for common ground? And so these dynamics fighting may seem on the surface very petty and stuff, but there's a much larger agenda people are missing here
Yeah.
about the real war that's going on in the world right now.
Well, the question comes down to truth. And it's that what is true? And I think society tries to orientate itself towards truth. And what happens is that we have these back and forths
So
where
who
when we
decides? But who decides what is truth? What
so this
makes
is
your
right.
reality better than mine?
So this is moral relativity, right? It's like who's to say what is right and what is wrong? In this case, we know for certain if I were to walk into your office and take a hammer to the wall and start breaking all the art behind you, I think both you and I agree that's wrong and it's
No,
not okay for me to do that.
no.
I don't think you would
I
be
would
happy if
I
I
would
did
need
that.
to know. I would need to understand why. So this is the argument of it is considered okay. What if you knew that there was a gas leak, and by doing that you were going to save me, and I didn't know that? That's what perspective is. By not having
So
all
then let's
information.
take it away from the wall. Let's
No,
say
no,
I
no. But what I'm saying is, if I
yeah.
don't have the information for why something is occurring, can I subjectively make a decision that there was a positive or negative aspect to what is happening if I don't understand why it's happening? That's the argument. Not saying I
Well,
understand
we
like
could.
shooting someone or raping someone is not
Yes,
considered right, in the sense, but
yes.
society has taught us that there is a legal precedence to doing that. Running a red light is wrong because it imposes and breaks the experiences of other people. You can cause an accident and create a problem.
Yes. Well, even, if you're saying with the rape or murder thing, let's say let's not even use the art as an example. If I were to take a hammer and bust your kneecap with it
Mhm.
and do that, and I just did it because there's no reason behind it. I just did it because I don't like you and I'm going to bust your kneecap. I think everyone agreed that's wrong. And then the question becomes
Yes, 100%.
why? It's like, why? Why is
Well,
that
so
wrong?
here comes, what experience are you attempting to have? You're running an experience of deceit. You are now coming into my consciousness and altering my experience when it isn't your place to touch my experience.
Yes. So
My
then why is
right,
that
so that's
wrong?
what breaks. Well,
Yeah.
because here's the argument in the same way. If you run a red light in the middle of the night when no car is coming, right?
Yep.
It's a legally wrong thing to do, but it doesn't alter someone else's experience unless an accident occurs. Correct? It
Yes.
only alters your own. So therefore now running a red light in the middle of the night so you don't lose 42 hours when no one's around clearly and you're not going to cause an accident, while has a legal precedence to it, has no wrong conscious
It
precedence to
doesn't.
it because
It
it's
doesn't. Yeah.
a man-made
Exactly.
legal thing. However,
So
if you
that.
run that
Yeah.
red light and get in an accident because you're not paying attention, T-bone another car and kill a person, you've now invaded someone else's experience, right? So therefore,
Absolutely.
your attempt, even though in your mind was just to run a red light, right, now has become wrong because it has altered someone else's experience.
So
So my
that right
argument is
there.
that,
Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
we are in control of our lives and our experiences. We are given structure through religion, through law, to enable us to stay in our lane and not collide with each other in a means that prevents this experience and the collective experience of a society to move forward. We've been given these things as reasoning for that. Like that's what happens. When people defy that, that's why we've had some of the biggest wars in the world over religion and belief systems, because people defy that logic and structure. And then
Yeah.
the forces in control of each of these want to ensure their way is the means of going forward. That it's personal or that it's societal doesn't make a difference. They want control. So
Yeah.
so that occurs, and basically it creates a very different experience for everybody. And a lot of people die.
Yeah. I know we're almost at the top of the hour. I did have one more question. I didn't know if you have time to go over a little bit though.
Oh, let's go, baby.
So I guess the thing with we're talking about the car crashing, all this type of stuff. I guess then it comes to, okay, why is it wrong to invade someone else's human experience? That's where I think it's like we can't say actually what it is. We say it's society, but let's say we strip away society and get rid of that entirely. It's still at a point, it doesn't feel right if someone comes and just murders me and my family. That doesn't feel good. And so then it becomes, why is that? That's where I believe we're now operating from something that is higher than us, that is universal law. And what is universal law? So now
So
there's laws like, and Hermeticism talks about this, as above, so below,
yep,
et cetera,
yep.
et cetera. All these, who forms these laws? This is where I think we're starting to crack into what is truth and what is truth in general.
So I'll tell you what truth is in context to consciousness is the in because each person's truth is individual to their own. Not saying there is a universal truth, and it is only universal because the collective knowledge of all things associated with that truth cannot prove otherwise. So the most conscious people are the people who can continuously negate themselves over time. Like you would tell me this car holds more value than this car, and I would tell you no, that's wrong. You would say, well, you're an arrogant prick because in my opinion it does. And I would say, but I've already negated your opinion because I've done what you said you could do once. I've done it 320 times and the data speaks otherwise. My truth holds more weight than yours because it comes with more in times where I've negated your experience, you haven't negated mine. Right? A scientist would say, aha, I figured out gravity. Someone else would say, no, I've already done that. It doesn't work. Right? So the scientist would say, well, wait a minute. Like if you've already negated that, yeah, it doesn't work. You don't have to go down that path. 50 of us have already gone that path. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So the scientist comes back and goes, well, we'll alter it this way. Fine. Nobody has negated that. Let's check.
Yeah.
No, you're correct. That is new. Okay, you hold the ultimate truth right now. So the argument is that if collectively we've agreed to basically a truth, right? Red is stop, green is go. I have to negate that that basically truth is not adopted anymore in order to be able to justify that there's a universal truth greater than the one you follow. So the universal truth is nothing more than the acceptance of data that cannot be negated by a single person when the collective consciousness has agreed that that is what the data signifies. So that's all that a universal, like a universal accepted truth is. And I like to use the word accepted because it can always change, right? And the
Right.
most conscious people can continuously adopt and adapt faster. More information means more data. We change our minds. And that's
Uh,
consciousness to evolve and to change. But something that I think is very important, you talked about why is it wrong to invade someone else's experience or to come into it? We as human beings form contracts before we come into our bodies. We have an opportunity to interact with each other, and we have an opportunity to not invade but interact with each other's experiences for wisdom or for deceit, however we choose that to, or however we intend that to be, right? However, one thing that I think is very key is us as individuals have an opportunity to have a life experience for our own internal evolution, like I talked about earlier. If someone strips you away of that opportunity, and I believe the ecosystem sometimes has what you would consider random acts of nature that cannot be controlled, where unfortunately you were in the wrong fucking place at the wrong time.
tiger attacked you.
Right.
Sorry.
Or like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
sea was an unpredictable thing. You were on a boat. You weren't really
Yeah.
meant to go on a boat, and that
Yeah.
boat just drowned, like, and
Yeah.
everybody on it is dead.
Yeah.
The argument is I don't argue that, oh, well, is that intent? I think there is random acts of nature that we give way more knowledge and power to than they need to be, other than just acts of nature. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate. We accept life on life's terms, and sometimes those terms are not the ones we want it to be dealt with, right?
Yeah.
However, there is a reality here that if we have control of our capacity for invading or hindering someone else's experience, that is a form of deceit. And so we have to really question what is the purpose of that and what comes from that. And so if nothing good comes from that, nothing of value comes from it, what was the purpose or position of it? It's our inability to deal with our humanity. It's our inability to deal with components of being a human, with the act of jealousy, with the act of hatred, with the act of things that even bad love in itself can be a negative, you know, actor in the game of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
So every aspect of our humanness is about control and structure within our own body and our capacity to use the tools we've been given. Our chakras are what blood is to our body, to our spirit. So all of these things are nothing more than just the ability as a human to evolve, open your chakras, control your energy, continuously bring the energy into the world, bring it back, recycle it, continue to grow it until it's time for your body to deteriorate and you carry on.
So
And
you
that
said
carry
you
on,
said here energy and chakras. This is where I go with it, is like, where does that come from? Where does
your spirit,
energy come from? Well, where
your
does
spirit,
that come from?
a fourth dimensional being trapped in a three-dimensional body.
And then
Really
where,
simple.
like this, so this is kind of where I'm going with it, is if we keep going where, or
Mhm.
why, really, with anything, eventually we end up at I don't know. And so what ends up at
We end
I
up
don't
at I don't know very close. We don't even need to go that far from where we are. We don't know 99% of what's out there in the world.
right. So if it's I don't know, then what
Mhm.
gets inserted is the concept of faith. And the faith
Yeah.
is that you have to look for signs. And it's like, okay, to believe something, if I were to tell you to believe that supercars are really awesome, you'd probably need to step into a couple supercars to like be able to really
But
like
you
you
have
could
a
trick
way
me
you
on
have
it.
a way to validate that. The God argument is one that cannot be validated. That's the thing though.
I think there's a
How do
lot
you
of ways.
validate that? Tell me one example that has validation behind the fact. It doesn't have an explanation, is fine. But does it have validation that it was indeed God? Like the argument is not just because we don't know means you have faith that something greater took effect. I agree with that. The
Yeah.
argument is not the existence of God, and whether if he exists immediately or further from us than we know, or whatever it is. The argument is not that does a greater being exist that we don't have control of 100%. Are they greater individuals and beings that we don't understand, we don't know, that are around us or that manifest miracles, whatever you want to call it. Sure. Okay.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
call that fate? Okay, no problem. I'll go with it. I'll call it fate in something we don't understand, right? My argument to that entire evolutionary track is that if I believe and leave things to fate, I therefore take away the control. And I am given capacity and mindset to create the control. My body is a control mechanism for my spirit. So if I'm not using it and I'm hoping someone else does for me, how fucked am I? You know,
Well, so this is
that's the
you have.
argument,
It's like the saying is that God will handle the impossible, you handle the possible. And
right?
so I look at it as like you have to control what's in yours. The question is like, okay, like how do you prove that it's real? Well, there's just certain things that's like, all right, that's pretty odd. So if you were to look at, for instance, the DNA, if you were to look at DNA and the encoding of DNA, there's some number that comes out to,
Mhm.
you can Google it. It's like what,
No,
10
no, I
5.
know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
10565 or something
Uh-huh.
like that. And then it comes up to Jehovah is when you spell that out in Hebrew. And then look at, for instance, the Quran, the Bible. There's a picture of the Bible I saw once where it shows all of the references of the Bible connected through the Bible and lines
Yep,
showing it. And it's more than any book in the history ever.
100%. Yeah,
Quran, same thing there. The Quran,
100%.
when you, it's they can't even make a text similar
Mhm.
to it in rhyme structure of what is in Arabic. And so I look at all these things and it points me towards, okay, like you can't really like logically explain it actually.
Well, you
And
don't
so
have
then
to,
yeah, so then okay, if we can't explain it logically and
but
man
that's
exists in the realm of
because
logos.
no, because we don't understand time. We are completely prisoners of it. We have no understanding and capacity to control time in our space. That means that are things impossible? Are things not coordinated if you could view time all at once? Like, how could I beat every odd, win every lottery game, right?
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah,
Would
if
you
you
not
had
say,
all time.
this
Yeah.
guy is blessed by God, right? Like, he has
Yeah.
won every lottery for the
Mhm.
last 10 fucking years in a row, every single number done. There is no fucking logical explanation to this where you
Yeah.
literally go pick the numbers yourself and go, there is
Yeah.
no way someone rigged this. How
Yeah.
did this guy have these numbers?
Yeah.
So it would be an act of God or fate,
Yes.
except if I had a full view of time. Meaning, if I could see time always as past, present, and future all at once, all the time, my argument would be what I create today, knowing what occurs in 300 years or not, knowing how things connect in the future or not, because
Yeah.
even though they haven't been experienced now, they've already taken place. The argument is, would I not be a God to you because I have full view of
Absolutely.
everything going on?
I
Okay.
don't know if I necessarily view it as your God. I believe that you have connection to God.
Okay, okay, fine. I have connection to God, but I'm a greater being than you because I
Sure.
control time.
Sure.
That's my fucking point. If I control time, that means I am a fourth dimensional being that is trapped by
Mm.
the fifth. Therefore, my scale is not space, it is time. I view all time at once, all the time, which is my whole point that our gods, our real gods, the ones that truly make the energy flow for us as humans here, are
Mm.
nothing more than fourth dimensional beings. And my argument is those fourth dimensional beings are nothing other than humans who have either evolved or don't currently have a shell, meaning a body to exist in the physical form. So
Interesting.
my whole argument is that we are fourth dimensional beings. We use our bodies as a means to interact and experience the world so we can evolve to being fourth dimensional beings to help it run. Now, what comes next? What about the fifth? What about the sixth? What can that
Yes.
God do?
Yeah.
But here's the beauty of it. Why do we give a shit about level 10 of a video game when we haven't mastered level 2? So my
Mm.
argument is you can go down this rabbit hole and eventually tell me there is a giant God and he does control all heavens and earth and dimension 525 is basically the end game and that's where it is. But the argument is in my lifetime, in my brain, as small as it is, as conscious as it is or not, will never grasp the full magnitude of being a human
Absolutely.
anyways.
Absolutely.
No,
I agree
even
with
being
that
a human,
completely.
even being a
Yes.
human. So let alone try to use my imagination to decipher what is it like to control time and how can I alter it? Like, so
100%.
I'm not even a scientist,
I'm
so who
with you.
gives a shit? You know,
I'm with
like
you on that, dude. Like, and I'll let's wrap up on this, because I want to respect your time on this, dude. But like, I remember reading Book of Job, and I don't know if you've read Job. And there's a story where essentially the story is that the devil has a bet with God that if you were to take everything away from this man, he wouldn't worship you. And so God takes everything away from the man. The man at first is praying to God and then is going back and forth and is like, "Why, God? I'm upset. I believe in God. I'm praying." His friends come and question him, say, "You must have done something wrong for God to do this to you." And eventually Job yells out to God. And God comes down and grabs him and takes him and shows him the entire universe. And he
mhm.
says, "Even if I were to explain everything to you, there is zero way that you could ever understand it. Even the molecular structure," he doesn't say this specifically, but the molecular structure of a turtle shell or of the what is in Mars or whatever. If I were to show all the intricacies of it, you could never possibly understand it. And he
Exactly.
sends him back
And
down.
you're just not set to do that. Like, that's not what your life experience here is meant for
Absolutely.
anyways.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
even if you had some level of answer, right, and you told me this is dimension 6 and 7 and this is why it's going to play out, it is beyond our need for
Yeah,
comprehension.
what the fuck are you even gaining from that?
Yes, and so the argument, let's talk about the application of this. Like, we're talking very
Yeah.
spiritually, very large
Yeah.
overview here. Let's talk about the application of this in the sense of business today. How many people are stuck in this world where they wonder, how do I make $100 million when they don't have 10 million to their name? What if they don't even have a million to their name? They don't have 100K to their name, but they worry about a level they haven't even reached. The argument is, as you reach 100K, you will learn the path to a million. As you reach a million, you will understand the path to 10. As you reach the path to 10, you will understand the path to 100. And so the argument is, there is no point in trying to make sense of $100 million when you haven't made $10 million. There's not even a point in trying to understand what does that path look like, because by the time you're there, that path will look completely different. It isn't there. So my entire argument to people is, to take this conversation from this high level overview of
Yeah, yeah,
religion
yeah,
and
yeah.
everything else into an application state. It is, the simplicity of life comes from progress. Every act of consciousness is driven by the idea of forward moving. Anxiety comes from falling behind. Depression comes from falling behind to a degree where you believe you cannot catch up. These are the simplest elements of humanity that we have turned into pills,
Wow.
and we have
Yeah.
turned into very complex brain chemical bullshit that we need to go to the doctor and see 19 people and a priest
You need to
because they think we
meditate.
need an
Yeah.
exorcist to
Yeah.
fucking figure out, why
Yeah.
am I depressed? Well, listen,
Yeah.
if you're depressed in your love life, it's because you don't believe you'll ever find someone. If you're depressed in your business, it's because you believe you're too far to catch up and you'll never make it. If you're starting to have anxiety, it's because you're falling behind and time is moving at a pace you cannot keep up with. These are
Mm,
all arguments that people just
wow.
misunderstand about the human experience. And everything we talked about today is nothing more than a perspective on the human experience. And while everyone's perspective is going to be different, I welcome anyone to try to negate mine. And I welcome that debate at any time.
That's amazing, dude. This was an amazing conversation. I appreciate you hopping on, dude.
My pleasure.
Anything you want to leave the audience with? Any direction you want to point them? Social, anything like that?
Listen, you can follow me for cars, watches. If you enjoyed this conversation, you thought this was a value, and you want to dig in deeper on this, I have written a dozen books, two of which have become bestsellers on this topic alone. The first one is Third Circle Theory. The second one is called Gate of Choice. They're part of a trilogy, but if you read those, just those two, Third Circle Theory and Gate of Choice, in this order, you will have a roadmap to what I believe to be my path to my personal consciousness, which I have told people is an opportunity for you not to become me, but rather to negate me and go past me. So here's the argument. Can you read them? Can you find something wrong with them? Can you prove me I'm wrong? So that way we as a society can evolve even further.
It's amazing. Thank you, dude. Awesome conversation.
Pleasure, my friend. Be
There
well,
we
okay?
go.